The gym was silent, except for the rhythmic sound of gloves hitting the heavy bag. Mike Tyson moved with the precision of a man who had done this 1,000 times, each punch landing with a force that could shake the soul of any opponent. Sweat dripped from his brow, his breathing steady, controlled. This wasn't just another training session, it was the final one before stepping into the ring again, perhaps for the last time. Everything had to be perfect. His team stood around him, watching closely, offering advice, but mostly, they just let him work. Tyson didn't need motivation. He was a man who had spent his life in the ring, and today was no different. But then, the door creaked open, and the energy in the gym shifted. At first, no one paid attention. Strangers came and went, sometimes fans, sometimes fighters looking to learn from a legend. But this was different. The figure that entered wasn't just another curious onlooker. There was something off about the way he walked, purposeful, but not in the way a fan approaches an idol. He wasn't here for an autograph or a quick handshake. He was here for something else. Tyson's trainer noticed first, his voice cutting through the air. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone firm but polite. The man didn't respond right away. Instead, he took a slow step forward, his gaze locked onto Tyson as if he had something important to say, something urgent. Tyson, mid-combination, stopped. He let his gloves drop slightly, his chest rising and falling as he turned to face the intruder. His eyes, the same ones that had stared down giants in the ring, studied the stranger with quiet curiosity. The gym grew eerily quiet, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. A few of the younger fighters shifted uneasily, sensing something was off but not sure what. The stranger wasn't afraid. If anything, he looked like a man who had been waiting for this moment for a long time. "I need to talk to you," the man finally said, his voice calm but heavy with something unspoken. Tyson didn't blink. He had heard those words before. They came from challengers, from men looking for a shot, from people trying to prove something. But this was different. There was no bravado, no arrogance, just an eerie sense of purpose. His trainer stepped forward, about to intervene, but Tyson lifted a gloved hand, signaling him to wait. The stranger took another step forward, close enough now that Tyson could see the faint scar on his jawline, the subtle twitch in his fingers. He wasn't just any man. He had seen fights before, maybe not in the ring, but somewhere else, somewhere where losing wasn't an option. For the first time in a long time, Tyson felt something stir inside him that wasn't just focus. It was curiosity, maybe even a hint of something deeper. The man finally spoke again, his voice lower, this time, meant only for Tyson to hear. "You don't know me," he said, "but you're going to want to hear what I have to say." Tyson exhaled slowly, rolling his shoulders, the tension in his muscles refusing to ease. Around him, his team exchanged glances, unsure of what to do. This wasn't just some random encounter. This was something else, something bigger than any of them understood. Tyson had met all kinds of people in his life, fighters, promoters, fans, enemies, but there was something about this man that unsettled him. Not because he was afraid, but because for the first time in a long time, he had no idea what was about to happen next. Then, without warning, the man reached into his pocket. Instinct took over. Tyson's fists clenched, his stance shifting ever so slightly, ready for anything. A few of the trainers moved in, prepared to step between them if needed. The air in the gym felt electric, every person holding their breath, waiting for whatever was coming. And then, just as quickly as the moment had built, the stranger pulled out. Tyson's eyes flickered to the man's hand as he slowly pulled out a folded piece of paper. The tension in the gym didn't break, if anything. It grew sharper, more focused. A piece of paper shouldn't have meant anything, but the way the man held it, the way he carefully unfolded it, made it feel like something far heavier than just ink on a page. Tyson didn't move. His muscles coiled like a spring, waiting. His trainer, still wary, stepped closer, but Tyson shot him a quick glance, telling him to stay back. The stranger's hands were steady as he extended the paper. "Read it," he said. Tyson hesitated for a brief second before reaching out, his gloved fingers brushing against the worn edges of the page. He pulled it closer, his sharp gaze scanning the contents. The moment his eyes landed on the words, a strange shift happened in his expression, something subtle but undeniable. His brow furrowed, his jaw tightened ever so slightly. The words on the page weren't long, but they were enough to make him inhale sharply through his nose. He looked up at the man, his expression unreadable. "Where did you get this?" Tyson's voice was controlled, but there was an edge to it now, something almost dangerous. The man didn't flinch. He held Tyson's gaze with an intensity that few had dared before. "It doesn't matter where I got it," he replied. "What matters is that you understand what it means." Tyson stared at him for another long moment before shifting his gaze back to the paper. The words felt like they had weight, like they carried something more than just their literal meaning. He knew what they implied, but he didn't know if he was ready to believe it. The silence in the gym stretched, the other fighters and trainers barely daring to breathe. Tyson's mind worked fast, piecing things together, trying to make sense of the sudden shift in his day. He had walked into the gym this morning thinking about footwork, power, speed, but now something far more unpredictable had entered his world. He looked back up at the stranger, who was still standing there, waiting. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't unsure. He had come here with a purpose. "I don't have time for games," Tyson finally said, his voice low but firm. "If you came here for a fight, you're in the wrong place." The man shook his head slowly. "I didn't come here to fight," he said. "I came here because you need to know the truth. And you need to know it now." There was something about the way he said it that sent a chill down Tyson's spine, not fear, but something else, something unfamiliar. He had been in countless fights, faced men who wanted to take his head off. But this was different. Tyson took another look at the paper, then back at the man. He could feel his trainer's eyes on him, his team's concern growing with every passing second. But none of them spoke. This was between Tyson and the stranger now. Slowly, deliberately, Tyson folded the paper and tucked it into the waistband of his shorts. "If you're serious," he said, "you're going to have to explain a lot more than this." The man gave a slight nod, as if he had expected that answer. He took a step back, his posture still calm, still controlled. "Not here," he said. "Not in front of everyone." Tyson studied him for another moment before making a decision. He turned to his trainer. "Give me a few minutes," he said. His trainer didn't like it. Tyson could see it in his eyes, but he nodded anyway. Without another word, Tyson motioned for the man to follow him to the back of the gym, where the noise of the punching bags and training routines faded into the background. He stopped near a set of lockers, crossing his arms over his chest. "Talk," he said. The man exhaled slowly, as if bracing himself. "What I'm about to tell you," he said, "changes everything." Tyson kept his arms crossed, his breathing steady, his expression unreadable. The air between them felt heavy, like the moment before a storm. The stranger glanced around once, as if making sure no one else could hear, then leaned in slightly. "You don't know me," he said again, his voice low but unwavering. "But I know you, and I know something that you need to hear." Tyson didn't react, didn't flinch. He had dealt with all kinds of people in his life, promoters with hidden agendas, challengers looking to prove themselves, even strangers who thought they had a claim to his past. But this was different. This man wasn't here for money, fame, or recognition. Whatever he had to say, it was personal. The stranger took a slow breath before continuing. "This isn't about boxing," he said. "It's about something bigger." Tyson's eyes narrowed just slightly. He didn't like vague warnings, and he liked mysteries even less. "Then get to the point," he said. The man hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "There's something you don't know about a fight that never happened," he said. "A fight that was supposed to happen. One that was taken from you." Tyson's expression didn't change, but inside, something shifted. He had been in countless fights, had won, had lost, had been denied matches for all sorts of reasons. But this man was implying something different. "Go on," Tyson said, his voice calm but edged with something sharp. The stranger's fingers twitched slightly, a sign of controlled tension. "Years ago," he said, "someone made sure you never stepped into the ring with an opponent who should have been your biggest fight. They didn't just block the match. They erased it." Tyson's heartbeat remained steady, but the weight of those words settled over him. There had always been whispers about fights that could have been about deals made behind closed doors. But to hear it framed like this deliberate, intentional sabotage made something deep inside him tighten. The stranger took another step closer, lowering his voice even more. "I have proof," he said. "Names, dates, documents. Everything." Tyson didn't react immediately. He had spent years learning to control his emotions, to not let anyone see past the mask of composure he wore in and out of the ring. But this was something else. If the man was telling the truth, if someone had taken away a fight that should have changed his career, changed history, then it wasn't just about boxing anymore. It was about the truth. The gym felt distant now, the sounds of training muffled as Tyson focused solely on the man in front of him. "Why tell me this now?" he asked, his voice steady. The stranger exhaled, his jaw tightening. "Because the person who made sure it never happened is about to step back into the spotlight," he said. "And they think no one will ever find out what they did." Tyson's fists clenched just slightly. He wasn't a man who lived in the past, but he was also someone who had never let a challenge go unanswered. If there was something to uncover, something to set right, he needed to know. Before he could speak, the stranger pulled something else from his pocket this time, a small, worn envelope. He extended it toward Tyson. "Take this," he said. "Read it when you're alone, and then decide what you want to do." Tyson took the envelope without breaking eye contact, feeling the weight of whatever was inside. He didn't trust easily, but something about this moment, about this man's certainty, made it impossible to ignore. Just as Tyson was about to say something, the door at the far end of the gym swung open and a familiar voice called out. One of his longtime trainers, unaware of what was happening, waved him over. "Mike, we need to go over strategy." Tyson glanced at the trainer, then back at the stranger. But the man had already stepped away, his expression unreadable. "Think carefully," he said, his voice low but firm. "Because once you open that, there's no going back." Then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the exit, disappearing into the fading light outside. Tyson stood there for a moment, the envelope in his hand feeling heavier than it should have. Whatever was inside, it had the power to change something. Maybe everything. But was he ready to find out the truth? Without another thought, he slipped the envelope into his pocket, turned back toward the ring, and walked away.